Welcome back to Creepy Narratives. Tonight, we delve into tales based on true stories where ordinary moments twist into chilling encounters. Dim the lights, and let's navigate these haunting realities together. Sophie had grown accustomed to the conveniences of city life, including the luxury of hailing an Uber at any hour. On this particular night, after a late gathering with friends, she opened the app and booked a ride home. The car's arrival was almost instant. A nondescript black sedan pulled up, the Uber logo gleaming faintly in the dim light. The driver, a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard, gave a half smile, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of a worn-out hat. "Sophie?" he asked, his voice soft but raspy. Sophie climbed into the back seat, her mind still replaying the fun memories from the night's gathering. The comfortable hum of the car and the soft glow of the dashboard lights felt somewhat soothing. But as the vehicle glided down the streets, Sophie's comfort was disrupted by a growing confusion. The maze of streets they turned onto didn't line up with the usual way she'd always traveled home. She leaned forward slightly, eyes squinting at the navigation screen on the dashboard. She wasn't one to question drivers. After all, maybe this one knew a faster route. But the glaring fact was that her home was just a straight shot down a major avenue, and there weren't many reasons to deviate from that direct path. Clearing her throat gently, she began, "Is there some construction or traffic up ahead? This isn't the usual way." "I'm taking a shortcut," came the driver's quick reply, his eyes fixated on the road. There was a certain roughness to his voice, like the grinding of gravel. Sophie couldn't see his face clearly, only the outline of his profile dimly lit by the occasional passing streetlight. She leaned back, trying to shake off the rising ball of anxiety in her stomach. Perhaps he's new to the job, or new to the area, she thought, attempting to reason with herself. However, every instinct in her was starting to scream that something wasn't right. Suddenly, the familiar city lights started to dim, giving way to a more secluded, shadowy road. The air grew colder, and the hum of the car's engine became noticeably louder, filling the otherwise silent atmosphere. Sophie felt her heart rate pick up. She recognized the name of the street they'd just turned onto from stories shared around campfires and whispered among friends during sleepovers. Hollow Street, the place of many urban legends where folks spoke of cars breaking down mysteriously and travelers never returning. It was said that those who traveled on Hollow Street after dark were never seen again. She had always laughed off those stories, considering them nothing more than local lore. But now, in the depth of night, sitting in the back seat of a car driven by a stranger, those tales didn't seem so laughable. Pulling out her phone, Sophie thought of dialing a friend or even the police, but before she could make a decision, she lost signal. Her screen displayed no service. How was that even possible in the middle of the city? Glancing out of the window, she noticed the landscape had changed. The previously dense urban surroundings gave way to an eerily open space with wilted trees casting long, gnarly shadows on the road. The moon, which had earlier been a mere sliver, now loomed large, casting a pale glow. Summoning every ounce of courage, she leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Why are we on Hollow Street?" The driver remained silent for a moment, then turned his head slightly. The brim of his hat shadowed his eyes, but she could see a faint smirk forming on his lips. "It's faster," was all he said. With every passing second, Sophie's unease grew. Hollow Street seemed endless, and the tales of its hauntings played in a loop in her mind. She had to find a way out before it was too late. The city lights had faded now, replaced by an enveloping darkness, broken only by the car's headlights. The radio played an old tune, one that seemed from an era long gone. The road seemed to stretch endlessly. 10 minutes turned into 20, then 30. Sophie's breath caught in her throat as she mustered the courage to voice her growing alarm. "Why haven't we left Hollow Street yet?" A tense silence enveloped the car. The only sound was the soft purr of the engine and the distant hooting of an owl. The driver took his time, the weight of his contemplation pressing down on Sophie. The radio, playing a faint old song, was slowly turned down until the car was bathed in an unsettling quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, but there was an unnerving edge to it. "Hollow Street," he began slowly, "has its own stories to tell, stories I've become a part of." As he said this, his eyes locked onto Sophie's through the rearview mirror, their depthless gaze sending chills down her spine. The cold atmosphere inside the car seemed to grow denser. Sophie's heart raced, each beat echoing her mounting dread. She scanned the doors for an escape latch, her mind racing to recall safety tips she'd read about situations like this. But before her thoughts could form into actions, the car came to a sudden, jarring stop, causing Sophie to jolt forward. She quickly looked up, and her blood ran cold. There, in the middle of the road, was a towering, shadowy figure. It wasn't distinctly human, but had an eerie humanoid shape, its form shifting and undulating as if made of smoke. To Sophie's horror, the driver calmly unlocked the doors. "Every time," he whispered, his voice dripping with a mixture of reverence and dread, "I come to this place, they're here, waiting for their story to be acknowledged." Sophie felt the weight of unseen eyes on her, the shadowy entities of Hollow Street watching, waiting. The tales of travelers disappearing didn't seem so far-fetched now. The boundary between reality and the legends of Hollow Street was blurring, and Sophie found herself at the heart of its most chilling story. Sophie's chest tightened as the shadowy figure slowly drew closer to the car. Each step it took seemed deliberate, resonating with an unspoken intent. As the foggy veil around it cleared slightly, a realization dawned on Sophie. This specter bore a haunting resemblance to a younger version of her driver. The entity moved with an eerie grace, reaching out with an insubstantial hand that seemed to waver between being solid and smoke-like. As it touched the driver, a chilling transformation began. The driver's youthful features aged rapidly. Lines and wrinkles etched his face, his eyes deepening into hollows, giving him the appearance of someone who had lived multiple lifetimes in mere moments. In contrast, the shadowy apparition began to solidify, its smoky edges becoming defined, adopting the younger, more vibrant look of the driver. It was as if time was being siphoned, transferred from one to the other. With a heart-wrenching finality, the now elderly form of the driver separated from his seat, stepping out and into the cold night. Sophie watched in horror as he stood there, momentarily looking at his younger self, a mix of sadness and resignation in his eyes. The elder figure then started to dissolve, fading into the obscurity of Hollow Street's darkness, becoming one with the countless legends that haunted its path. The younger driver, seemingly unshaken by the nightmarish exchange, continued driving, his hands steady on the wheel, his demeanor starkly contrasting the harrowing event Sophie had just witnessed. When the car finally pulled up outside Sophie's apartment, the surrounding urban noises seemed alien and intrusive. Sophie, shaken to her core, quickly gathered her things, her fingers trembling. As she stepped out, she met the driver's eyes one last time. There was an ageless wisdom there, a depth that hinted at experiences beyond comprehension. As she moved to close the door, she hesitated. Who are you?" The driver smiled wistfully. "Just a traveler like you on a longer journey." Leaving Sophie with more questions than answers, the car pulled away, disappearing into the night, much like the legends of Hollow Street. As she made her way up the stairs to her apartment, Sophie received a notification. Her Uber ride had been canceled the moment she booked it, stating an error in the system. She never got into an official Uber that night. Back on Hollow Street, the black sedan continued to roam, its driver forever trapped between past and present, seeking passengers for his eternal, haunting journey. Thank you for venturing into the dark with Creepy Narratives tonight. Our world hides eerie mysteries in plain sight, waiting to be unraveled. Until our next unsettling journey, sleep with one eye open and take care.